Alrighty, welcome back to Shut Up and Ball. I forget I'm on this side now, and yeah, I mean we're almost right here to the end of the start of the season. I am Aaron, as per usual. I'm joined by Mr. John Harris, as everyone, if you're watching YouTube, can see. But we're also joined very special guest, Mr. Mitchell Matthew, our local resident Washington football team fan. That was supposed to happen a year ago, but to be honest, not bad. It's happening now. So no offense, John. Throwing it to Mitch first. How you doing, Mitch? And I think we know how, but just real quick, how did you become a Washington football team fan? And if you want to explain that real quick for the people at home.
You know, because of this man right here. There's a Sean Taylor. Rest in peace, his soul. Been a fan for about 16, 17 years. Diehard Washington. I bleed burgundy and gold.
I love their colors. That's one of the things I love. I'm glad they didn't change the logo completely because their colors, their uniform colors, at least the combinations are really good. Obviously, you had to change the logo. But John, how you doing? I see you're ready for this episode. Obviously, repping your Cowboys.
I'm doing good. I'm ready for this episode. I'm glad that Mitch won't be here when we talk about the Cowboys, and I'm glad that I will be here when we talk about Washington. And before we get started, Mitch, I do have a question for you. Out of all the names that you heard, would you rather stick with the Washington football team or go with any other name they could come up with?
I've been hearing a lot of names out there. The ones that I stood out to me, I kind of like the Red Wolves. I'm a huge Wolves. I like huge Wolves fan, so I think that's pretty good. But I wouldn't be opposed to them keeping the Washington football team. It's unique. A lot of other sports do it. I think I wouldn't hate the name if it stayed the same, but I could see the Warriors or the Red Wolves. They kind of stick in the ring pretty well.
I don't think y'all will do the Warriors for the simple fact that everybody's just going to think of Golden State, and that'd be weird.
Yeah, possibly.
All right,
anyway, that's all I got.
Okay. All right, so we're just going to jump right into it. I'm going to name off some of the offseason moves, and I'll throw it to Mitch first. But let me do that first. So a bit of changeover. Alex Smith left. I think he technically retired, right? Did he? Or I forget.
Yeah.
He's not part of the team anymore.
He got cut, and then he retired because he got cut.
Anyway, and then obviously Ryan Kerrigan left. Morgan Moses was a surprise cut as well, and he left as well. Ronald Darby, Reuben Foster, who I believe was talking to the Jets earlier today. Let me see if I can. Once again, I'm just trying to make sure I didn't miss anybody else important. That's really about it, unless someone popped up in your head, Mitch. But so that's in terms of losses. In terms of gains, apparently y'all brought back Eric Flowers. Am I seeing this right on Over the Cap?
Yes,
you
we
brought
did.
back Eric Flowers.
Yeah, I left guard. We also lost what's his name? You said Darby
and
Darby?
Kevin Pierre-Louis, if that's what you're thinking about. Brought in Eric Flowers, brought in Charles Leno Jr., who's a solid tackle, Adam Humphries, and then also Bobby McCain, Ryan Fitzpatrick, who is, I think they've already named him Week 1 starter, correct?
Yep.
And then obviously one guy I really liked, William Jackson III. I think that was a great signing. And then Tyler Lawson, and then Curtis Samuel too was another good one there as well. And then in terms of the draft, first round at 19, got linebacker Jamin Davis, a guy I wasn't high on, but I saw I can understand the need and the fit, and he can still probably play. I think I tackled Samuel Cosme out of Texas in the second round. Third round got a cornerback, Benjamin St. Justy out of Minnesota. Juice, thank you. Wasn't sure if I needed to pronounce that properly. But then last but not least in the third round, got a guy I really liked, Dami Brown, another wide receiver out of North Carolina. So I'm going to throw it to you, Mitch. How do you feel about your team's offseason and how it will impact this season going forward?
I really think we got better. I think we got better on both fronts of the ball. We did lose Darby. We lost Kerrigan. I believe he went to the Eagles. But I think we did get better with adding William Jackson. We get a fresh Landon Collins. He'll help the run defense tremendously. And then there's a sleeper guy that people don't talk about, Matt Ioannidis. He's coming back healthy. He's going to be in that rotation for the D-line, which I believe is top 2, top 3 in the league. On the offensive side of the ball, we're going to get a new signal caller, no more Dwayne Haskins, no more Alex Smith, no more Kyle Allen. We have a journeyman in Mr. Ryan Fitzpatrick. Hopefully we get the Fitzmagic and not the tragic. But I think he will bring a level of quarterback play we haven't seen probably since in the beginning before Alex Smith got hurt or Kirk Cousins. I think if he could not turn over the ball, he'll be great for us. We also added Curtis Samuel, who's a speedster. You add him with Terry McLaurin and Antonio Gibson, all people that run 4.3s.
I
think we're gonna be fast.
4.3 if he
yeah,
did the 40s
Diami's up there. Yeah, Diami I think is gonna be really big addition to our team. You know, he brings that like flair to our receiving core. He could go up and get the ball. He had a really good catch in the preseason also, the back shoulder from Fitzpatrick, which I really love to see.
Yeah, and then obviously you also have Logan Thomas to that if you can build on what he had from last year. So a lot of exciting stuff. But yeah, so you did mention Fitzpatrick. And I think, I don't know how John thinks, I'll throw it to you in a second, John, but I think we saw Miami Fitzpatrick. If you can get at least Miami Fitzpatrick, you'll be fine. And I think that's what he is. He's actually, gotten, I know he's older, and some people think can't teach old dog new tricks, but he's gotten better at taking care of the ball as he's gone on throughout the years. So, but all right, John, I know this is, a rival team in your division. How did you feel about their offseason and what they did?
I liked some moves a lot, and then some kind of puzzled me. First off, I really liked the bigger name additions that they added, like Curtis Samuel, William Jackson III. I was also a fan of Diami Brown. I think they just added more weapons because we obviously know how good Terry McLaurin is. Antonio Gibson really showed out last year. And so I think adding Curtis Samuel and Diami Brown, like that just gives you more options to work with. And those two guys are both 4.3 guys. I don't know Diami Brown's exact 40 time these days, but I'm pretty sure the last recorded 40 time he ever had was like a 4.35 or something like that. So two speedsters. I think that could really open up the field for Scary Terry. I think he could actually potentially have a career best year just because of, the opposing defense is not having to put so much pressure onto him to try and stop Washington's offense. I know some people might have different opinions on Ryan Fitzpatrick, but I think he's an upgraded quarterback. Kyle Allen's, he's okay. I mean, we know what Haskins, like it just didn't work. Heineke had his few moments, but I don't think that he's really a starting quarterback. And Fitzpatrick, I think, is a great option for, your 1 year, 2 year stopgap kind of guy as you find your next quarterback. So yeah, I like overall most of the additions they made. One guy I wasn't super high on was Jamin Davis, the linebacker they took in the first round. I felt like he was a little bit overrated. We both like Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah more than him. But obviously there was the injury concerns and maybe Washington just didn't feel comfortable with that. So yeah, I mean, that was really the main issue or the main thing that I didn't like. I don't know how to feel about Sam Cosmi. I think he could have a lot of potential at guard, which I don't know what Washington's plan are, like where to play him. I don't know, Mitch, if you know where they plan to play him yet. But I think that
they're saying they're going to play him at tackle.
Okay, so maybe they try him out there. They swing him to guard later in his career. I don't know. I think he has potential to be a really, really good guard in the NFL. Maybe not like Pro Bowl level, but a really good one. And then at tackle, he's sort of similar to Connor Williams on the Cowboys. Both went to UT. Both have really sort of shorter arms. And at tackle, like that's just a thing that you got to have because you get these super fast, shifty defensive ends who are, way more athletic than you are. And so having that longer wingspan can really help stop those kind of guys. Also, he's not like the strongest of offensive linemen, which is once again why I just think that he'd be really good at guard because at tackle, there's just certain, worries I have that maybe he'd get a little bit overpowered by some guys or they'd be, more athletic than he is on the edge. But overall, I mean, I think Washington got better, like Mitch said. I think they have the potential to have the best defense in the entire league this year. You got Chase Young in year 2, the two Bama boys, the defensive tackle spots, Montez Sweat, their two cornerback spots are, real solid now, bringing back Kendall Fuller and William Jackson III, who I think was really underrated at corner. So yeah, I mean, they have all the pieces to have a good season this year. I think obviously, even though they have Fitzpatrick and it's an upgrade, that's still just a big question mark because he has had some inconsistencies over his career. And we've seen with so many teams that as good as you can be, if your quarterback situation isn't fully, solid, then you could lose some games that maybe you should have won. So yeah, overall, I think Washington's maybe a team that's kind of flying under the radar right now. I don't know what y'all's win total is right now, like in the Vegas betting odds. I think it's like 8.5 or 9. I feel like that's kind of low because out of all the NFC teams, I think the safest bet right now to actually win the division would be Washington because they have a really good defense, they have playmakers on offense, and they have, a veteran quarterback. So yeah, overall, I like their offseason. As a Cowboys fan, I don't like when the other opponents have good off seasons, but I got to give them credit. I think they did well. And they're one of those teams that, like, if they can get a really elite quarterback over like the next 3 years, you got to be worried.
Yeah. So I guess I'll start with my evaluation. Obviously, I think I've already told Mitch, I already alluded to, I love the William Jackson pickup. Added with that front four, and I'm with Mitch. It's easily top 2, top 3 in the league, if not one. Especially when you mentioned Matt Ioannidis is just a rotation guy. That's a pretty good defensive.
Which, by the way, real quick, I don't know if y'all saw this. Troy Apke has apparently been moved to cornerback, which is the first white corner that could maybe start a game this year in like over a decade.
I didn't even know that was even a thing. So
the last one was Jason Sehorn for the Giants. That was like early 2000s.
Damn. But regardless, I mean, I love. I think the defense will be better, even though we weren't high on John Davis. I mean, like I said, they definitely got better talent wise, and then like Mitch mentioned, Chase Young. I think he was out half of last year too. So now this year he'll have a full training camp under his belt. He's already got experience in the NFL from his last year. So. He's gonna be more scary. I mean, everyone knows I love him. I got all that flack for him at 2. I had 2 of my edge rushers. But and then on the offense, like I just think 2 more weapons. And I think obviously I think we all believe Fitzpatrick is an upgrade over the situation that he dealt with last year. And even if he's not the answer, I mean, I think Heineke can be solid enough. That they'll be a playoff team. I imagine that because. Like we saw last year, just take care of the ball. This defense is so good that you just don't blow the game. Maybe make a throw. We might need you to make a throw or 2 here to, a big throw. Other than that, just manage the game. But regardless, I mean, this is, in my eyes, I know we're going to talk about the rest of the division, but in my eyes, this is my division, my favorite to win the division of this team. And that's not because Mitch is here. I would say even if Mitch wasn't sitting here staring at me.
I mean, I'm the Cowboys fan, and I said they're the safest pick as of right now.
So
there's just question marks about everybody else.
And maybe it's at 8.5 because, I mean, do have a rough start to the season. The Chargers aren't an easy out, and then the Giants week 2 on Thursday night. So you get a short week to go to play the Giants, and then you're gonna go to Buffalo to play Buffalo and Josh Allen. So that would be a great test for the defense. And then, Falcons, okay, Saints, and then you play the Chiefs week 6. So, and then my Packers right after that. So by the way, a few weeks later, you play the Bucks right off your bye. But at least you get the bye for the Bucks. So
that 3 weeks is rough, though.
It is rough.
Yeah, it's a big.
Or 4 weeks.
But I mean, at the end of the season, you do have a little bit more. You have the Giants again, week 18, Philly. You have a lot of division games, really. Last 5 are division games, and then you have the Raiders right before that. So. Yeah, I love this team. This is a team that it's not. I think they're going to fly on the radar again this year. It's going to be one of those teams where no one cares. Oh, they won 20-17. No one cares, And then all of a sudden, when we look at the end of the year, and kind of like in the wild card game last year, like, oh my gosh, they almost beat the Bucks. It's because they have a great front seven, and they were one of the few teams that has a talent just to stop the Bucks run game and pass game. But any final thoughts or anything you want to add on there, Mitch?
Go Washington.
I have a quick question for you, Mitch.
Yeah, what's up?
Obviously, this is pure hypothetical because as of right now, Deshaun Watson is dealing with all the allegations. But let's say that he got fully cleared tomorrow and the Texans say, we're trading him, give us your best offer. Because obviously Houston's going to want a lot of picks, probably 3 firsts is what I'm hearing. And maybe a young defensive talent. I'm imagining that Chase Young is off the table in your mind, but who else outside of Chase Young would be off the table? And if Deshaun Watson was available, would you even want him?
Of course, Deshaun's a great quarterback. If he's, all these legal situations are gone, he's scotch free. I wouldn't mind us taking a look. He's a very young quarterback. You sign him up, you guarantee yourself a good quarterback for at least, I don't know how long his contract is.
I think it's 5 years,
3 or 4. Oh yeah, probably. This guy, he's got time.
If it's 5 years, you get 5 years of a top 6-7 quarterback in the league, probably maybe even better. He brings a new aspect to the team we didn't have, which he could run the ball also, which a lot of the other quarterbacks couldn't. Of course, I would. The people that would be untouchable. Realistically, Chase Young might be the only one, to be honest.
So if they say Scary Terry, Antonio Gibson,
come on.
Don't do this to me. The defensive tackles, Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, any of those guys are available.
I wouldn't want them to go, no.
Right.
But I feel like a quarterback is so valuable in this game. Scary Terry's great. Jonathan Allen's great. But I feel like it's easier to replace those players than get a lead quarterback in the league. So I would be opposed to trading. I don't like to say it, but I'll be opposed to trading them over, get Deshaun Watson.
All right. So let's say then they come to Washington. They say we want 3 first-round picks, one of those players that I named, and like a second-round pick. Would you do it?
Archie, 3 5s, Mitch. Yeah, I feel like that's got to scare you, right?
Yeah, it scares me because last time we traded
in.
our pick, RG3, yeah, we traded all our first-round picks, and then he didn't pan out for us. So
and keep in mind that kind of price tag could probably get you like the first overall pick next year, and then you're picking from all the college quarterbacks there.
Yeah, the Oklahoma guy,
Spencer Rattler.
Yeah, Spencer Rattler.
I don't know if you want him.
No, he's not good.
He's one of the options, though. We don't know. We got to see this year, but
man, it's tough. I say you have to go for him, man. It's a quarterback. It's very hard, especially a guy. He's like 26 years old. If we get him for 5 years and then we could maybe extend him, you got to take a chance at a quarterback. I don't know, bro. You're telling a Washington fan to give up his old team.
I feel like for any team, it's going to be hard, except for maybe Miami because they got all those draft picks. It's kind of ridiculous.
Oh yeah, but I feel like you got to make a move for Watson. If he's an elite quarterback.
I mean, like I said, I would imagine they'd probably want Chase Young, and in that case, I don't know if y'all.
I don't think they would trade him.
Then I think y'all would just go for a guy in the draft because that wouldn't require Chase Young. But yeah, I mean, like I said, if with that defense, if Chase Young's not in the deal, I think Washington would totally do it. And then I think they'd be a Super Bowl team at that point because when you have that
or in the running for it.
Yeah, I mean, but when you have that good of a quarterback with a top 5 defense, like minimum, like I said, I think they could be the best defense in football. Plus, I imagine you still have Antonio Gibson, Logan Thomas, Curtis Samuel, maybe Scary Terry if he's not included. Then I mean, I don't know how they wouldn't be a contender. But yeah, I was just interested to see if you would do it because I know some fan bases are not too keen on paying that price tag.
It's a quarterback. It's a quarterback's league. You have a quarterback, you're always going to be in the playoff hunt. Also, preseason, this guy Patterson, I don't know where he came from Buffalo.
Jarrett Patterson.
Yeah, 8 touchdowns in Buffalo. He looked really good too. And then I'm happy they signed him over Peyton Barber. So I think he might be a sneaky guy. Antonio Gibson has that receiving aspect. This guy he works hard and he just hits the hole really hard.
Yep.
Yeah. Just last point. I mean, it's more of a comment. I am agree with John about could be fancy. Washington could be one of the better defenses this year. I've just to take you back yesterday, just doing a live draft, sitting there. I do the strategy. I wait to get defense second to last and a kicker. And I was like, oh man, Washington's about to fall to me. And then Washington got took like 2 picks right before me. And the guy already had a defense, so I was a little upset about that. I ended up getting New England, so not too bad. But I would prefer Washington because you play the Eagles twice a year. We don't know how good the Giants' offense will be. Just from watching preseason, their offensive line has issues. And then I think Dallas will be good offensively. So,
but even then, like last year, Dallas struggled with turnovers, and that's what gets you fantasy points. So.
Yeah. I'm surprised you mentioned that. I feel like you would have. I thought you would have gotten that Thanksgiving game out of your. You would have suppressed that out of your
Nope,
memory. That was a bad one.
listen, when we talk about the Cowboys later in this episode, I'm gonna bring it up, and it's painful, but you got to talk about it.
You sure I can't say for that Cowboys talk?
Listen, you know what was worse about that Thanksgiving game? I was playing Antonio Gibson in
Oh,
multiple
boy.
money leagues, and he
Oh,
just
boy.
I had to watch him tear my team a new one and me in fantasy, and I'm pretty sure I lost both the leagues that I played against him.
Before we let go of Mitch, one last thing. Like, is that okay? There's that, or when, and I know Mitch remember this night when Fat Rob Kelly ran all over my Packers on a Monday night. Is that worse when you own? Because I owned Rob Kelly in a league, and he actually won me a game. But it was like, was it worth the pain that I went through? Because also it hurts more now in hindsight the fact that he didn't do anything after that.
Rob Kelly. I remember that game like it was yesterday.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, I don't know which is worse. I feel like that one is. I feel like John's situation's worse. But
No, definitely. It was on Thanksgiving, and then the worst part about it, both teams hate each other. You know, it's a huge rivalry game on television. I think it was actually, if I'm not lying, don't quote me. It was actually like the most watched game on television for like the regular season.
Oof.
I was pretty sure.
Thanksgiving one like that, I feel like that's the worst for me because my whole family's there. Like all my relatives are in town. We're watching the Cowboys game, and no one wants to talk afterwards.
Was that the one where Montez did the pick six?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, Jesus.
All right, but hey, Mitch, really appreciate you joining us. I'm glad I'm not gonna say exactly where we are, but I'm glad you and your family and and everyone we know there is doing okay after the two hurricanes that hit your area. We're really glad to hear that, and we hope.
I appreciate it.
Hope that maybe we'll bring you back mid-season. I don't know if we'll do the mid-season reviews, but regardless, thanks for coming on and just sharing your insight about your team with us, the Washington football team.
I'll be back if we're winning. If we're losing, you might not see me.
That's okay. Well, if we're losing, it might be the opposite. If you're losing, we might actually want to check in with you, as opposed to if you're winning. So, but we appreciate it, man, and have a nice night. And obviously, I'll see you. We'll talk tomorrow since we're all in the Dynasty League together. So that'll be fun.
Yeah, that'll be really fun. All right, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, man. So now we're going to start with the New York Giants. Shout out to our friend Tyrone. Resident Giant fan, and I guess also our friend Derek too. Can't forget him. So let me go over what they went through. I'm sorry. Once again, I should have had the Google Doc for this. Bad on me.
You're good.
Alrighty. So lost wide receiver Golden Tate. Also the right tackle Cameron Fleming, which I'm only mentioning that because they've had line issues for feels like forever. Also lost wide receiver Dante Pettis. Big loss we mentioned in the Vikings episode. Defensive lineman Dalvin Tomlinson, who I really liked, he also left as well. BJ Hill was another depth kind of lineman that they had that they lost, and then looks like that is about it in terms of losses. Additions. Oh, sorry, and they also cut Kevin Zeitler. That's another loss that they had, a guard. Which is pretty big. But they brought in tight end Kyle Rudolph, which is now especially big since Evan Ingram might miss time at the time of this recording. Also brought in John Ross, who already has a hamstring injury. Brought in defensive line Danny Shelton, who I think is a solid fill-in. Center, I think they traded for him recently. I forget. But Billy Price from the Bengals, they brought him in. Grabbed cornerback Adoree Jackson from the Tennessee Titans. I'm only mentioning this because I know Packer fan, but traded for Josh Jackson, our former second-round pick from the Green Bay Packers. Brought in Mike Glenn as a backup quarterback and Devontae Booker as a running back. And then that looks like to be it. Oh, I gotta forget. Wide receiver Kenny Golladay was their big signing for the free agency. We all know that they are New York, so they do get their hands into free agency a lot. So, in terms of the draft, first round at 20. They initially, I think, had 10. They're in the teens, I forgot, but they traded back with the Bears.
12.
12, because the Bears wanted to trade it.
No, they were at 11. They were 11. Right after Dallas.
Yeah, y'all were all in that scrum together.
The Eagles were next.
Round 1, pick 20, grab Kadarius Toney, who I believe has an injury right now, so he may have missed the beginning part of the season. I don't know his timeline. Then got in the second round a guy you liked, edge/linebacker Azeez Ojulari out of Georgia. And then in the third round, picked up a cornerback I was kind of high on, Aaron Robinson out of UCF. So adding to that defensive back room. We all know Joe Judge Came from New England, so he's running that New England type defense. So having a lot of corners, versatile corners, is very key to them. So I'm gonna throw it to you, John. How do you feel? This is a Giants team that almost made it to the playoffs last year, mainly just kind of like Washington because of their defense. So how do you feel about their offseason and how it'll impact the season going forward?
Well, first off, the Kenny Golladay signing, I think, was a big one. So was Adoree Jackson. I think free agency is always it's a weird spot, right? Because I think a lot of guys get paid more than they should. And I think I said this because we made a video about them signing them. And I do think that both of those guys were overpaid. Now, that doesn't mean they're not good players. That doesn't mean that it wasn't a good signing. I just think that based on the market value that they probably were commanding and what they deserve, I have question marks, right? For example, Juju Smith-Schuster, he went on like a bargain deal to the Steelers, and I have to imagine that he didn't do that because he was so loyal. I just think that maybe the market wasn't fully there that he thought would be there, and so maybe he took a little bit less money, but I think it was like 1 year for $8 million. Yeah. Meanwhile, Kenny Golladay, I don't know the exact figure, but I think he's getting almost twice that.
Up 1 second.
And so I just based on their levels of production, I'm not entirely sure that there's that big of a difference between Kenny Golladay and Juju Smith-Schuster. And I think overall, if you probably took out, last year, which once again, last year, their defense was amazing. They had Chase Claypool breaking out. Deontay Johnson is solid. And Juju still had a pretty decent year. I think you could honestly make the argument that they're sort of like Juju might be better. Do you have the exact cap figure?
So yes, 4 years, $72 million, $40 million guaranteed.
Yeah, so that's a lot of money. That's almost getting up there to $20 million a year. So it's just right under that. And once again, I'm not sure that there's other receivers who he's getting paid way more than that he's that much better than. And also, I know it's weird, but for example, like Kevin Love, when he was in, Minnesota on the Timberwolves, right? He was on a really bad team and he stat stuffed a lot and he was putting up crazy numbers. With certain guys like Kenny Golladay, right? He was on a really bad team, except they had a good quarterback. And so Matthew Stafford maybe just relied on him a ton. And I'm not saying that Kenny Golladay is a bad player, right? But they're just every time there's a guy like that, there's just question marks of, okay, how good is he really? Especially when you're going from Matthew Stafford to Daniel Jones. Can he put up the level of production that they just paid him for? Because with that kind of money, I think he needs to do better than he has done. Especially last year where he was hurt a lot of the year. He wasn't on the field for a large portion of time. When you pay a guy that much money, I would like to be a little more confident. But that rant overall, I think the Giants had a good offseason. I think if you take out the cap figure, right, and I think one reason that maybe they can pay those guys that much is they're not going to have to pay Daniel Jones like high-level quarterback money if they do keep him, unless he has a Josh Allen, MVP level season last year, which I don't think anyone believes he's going to have. But if he were to have that sort of a year, then you got to pay him a ton. But even if he gets better, I don't think people are expecting, his market value to go, 30 million or more. I think it'd be below that if they were to re-sign him. So that frees up money for other people. And like I said, if we take the cap figure out of it, I think they upgraded at receiver. I think they upgraded at corner. I really like Azeez Ojulari. I think maybe it's going to take a little bit of time for him to really grasp the NFL because he's one of those guys like Brian Burns to where he's a little bit undersized, but he has really good athleticism. And when you're going up against these just monstrous, tackles like Tyron Smith or David Bakhtiari or Tristan Wirfs, I don't know which side of the field Ojulari is going to line up on, but I'm just naming off tackles that he's got on his schedule. Those guys are big, they're athletic, they're just beasts. And so it might take a little bit more time for him to develop into the NFL. But just from a technique standpoint, I thought he was the best pure pass rusher in the draft. I think we were both, you were more high on Kadarius Toney than I was, but I think it was a solid pick. And Saquon Barkley comes back healthy. I mean, there was just a lot of positive moves that the Giants made throughout their offseason, but none of them addressed the main questions I have about the New York Giants, and that is Daniel Jones, Jason Garrett, and this offensive line, really. They added a few offensive line guys like Billy Price, but I think they really like their starting center. I can't remember his name. All I know is he's got the long hair and he loves talking trash. He gets into it every time that they play the Cowboys.
I'm not gonna. I thought about messaging Rowan right now because he probably would instantly answer back.
No, don't ask him.
Um,
It doesn't
I know
matter. He's not that
dealing with stuff
relevant
today. So
Anyway, so I still just have questions about their offensive line, Daniel Jones, Jason Garrett. But Jason Garrett, I mean, maybe I'm a little too harsh on him because I'm a Cowboys fan, but I feel like when I saw this guy be the coach of my team for over a decade, at some point you would sort of understand, like, okay, this is who he is. And so that's how I feel like I know about Jason Garrett. And I think there's a lot of times where he lacks creativity, and that's going to come back to bite any offense. And I feel like most of those times are in crucial moments, like third down, when you're going forward on fourth down. And I don't know if he has the same luxury that he had in Dallas, right? So there was times where on third downs, he would just run the ball, and sometimes it'd work out, but they had a really good offensive line, and the Giants don't have that. And so I think with the lack of offensive line talent, you have to sort of scheme up things that are going to, get the ball out quick and make a play happen. And I'm just not sure that Jason Garrett is the guy to do that. Daniel Jones, honestly, the way that I'm expecting this season to go, unless he, completely proves me wrong, I'm not expecting a massive jump. And I'm more than likely expecting the Giants to look for their next quarterback after this move. Now, I also said that about Baker Mayfield last year, and it looks like all signs are pointing towards them re-signing him to a big deal because they had a successful year. But also the Browns, unlike the Giants, once again, have one of the best offensive lines in football, and with a bad offensive line, it's just hard to do good. And I think that affects Saquon Barkley too. I think that there's like a cap on the ceiling that he can reach because of the offensive line play. And so, yeah, I mean, I think they had a good offseason. I don't think they addressed the concerns I do have. Maybe they're banking on internal improvement because they do have a couple of high draft picks along that offensive line. Matt Pert was a third rounder, I think. He's the right tackle. Will Hernandez is still there. He's playing right guard now, and I believe he was a second round pick. Andrew Thomas, who it's looking like a bad pick right now because Mekhi Becton looks so monstrous. Tristan Wirfs. Jedrick Wills for the Browns. I mean, there was just a lot of tackles that went after him that have looked really good. And yeah, I still have question marks about him, but he was a first rounder. He was the 4th overall pick, so maybe he can develop into something. It was just interesting that I thought he was the best just pure pass blocker in the draft, and last year he just did not look like that. So who knows? I mean, I'll turn it over to you because I feel like I've kind of been rambling a little bit, but okay. I don't feel like they addressed the main concerns that I have about this team. And although they did upgrade at other spots, I'm not sure they got that much different.
Yeah, so I'll start with defense. I'll start with the good news. Yeah, I think defensively, which you alluded to, I think they'll be at least the same or better. I liked the Adoree Jackson grab. I liked, I mentioned the rookie that they grabbed, Robinson, that I almost blanked on. And then, even though they lost Dalvin Tomlinson, they brought in Danny Shelton, who's similar with, knows the New England system because he's been in New England, went to, worked with Matt Patricia in Detroit. And then, obviously Blake Martinez another year. And so I'm not worried about their defense, as are you. But yeah, my concerns lie on the offense. I'll start with the offensive line. Just wasn't that impressive in preseason when the starters did play, especially like you mentioned, Andrew Thomas. He just hasn't looked like the number 4 overall pick. And it does hurt when guys like Mekhi Becton had a really good year, like you just went on about. And then also too, first round this year, I mean, could have gotten our guy Christian Darrisaw. He was falling, and I thought, man, I remember sitting there going, man, they get Darrisaw, that's a really good pick. And obviously they got Tony. I understand because you get Darrisaw and he misses again. It looks kind of bad on you, but I mean, at the same time, like you got to keep taking chances, taking stabs. Eventually, you're gonna get one right. And like you just,
But also,
and
I will say they're kind of in that awkward position where they just drafted those other two guys.
yeah.
So
Well,
maybe,
and Peart's a third rounder, so it's like
yeah.
it's not like a lot of pressure. If even he could probably they could make it work, move him to guard or something. I know he was more raw coming out, so it's or maybe you can get Darius Hall to play guard. You figure this out. I think Elijah Vera Tucker was also there at 20, and he was
I think he was there before they traded back, but I think he went like 15.
did he? I forget. Did the Jets trade up and get him? Oh, I forgot.
Yeah, they traded up and got
I forgot. I'm in my head. I'm still thinking they had 23.
Yeah,
but they traded up. But regardless, I mean they had that, and then, so it is disappointing because, like John mentioned, I just feel like we're not going to see Saquon to his full ability, and maybe that also limits what Jason Garrett can do because he's not confident these. If he wants to pull one of them or do some kind of creative run or play actions, like can I trust his offensive line? I'm not going to name any names 'cause I don't know, but can I trust Matt Peart to win his one-on-one battle this time? Against Montez Sweat. Then also, like the other issue that John mentioned that I have too is Daniel Jones. Just he's like the opposite of Eli, and maybe because he watched Eli at the start, but Eli's issue was at the end of his career was he started looking toward the pressure and he'd get rid of the ball real fast. Even though the pressure wasn't really getting there. While Daniel Jones, it's like he watched him, it's like, okay, so I need to be more patient in the pocket. And at times it's like, no, Daniel, you need to get out of the pocket. You're too patient in the pocket, and that's why you get strip sacked so many times. Yeah, hopefully he can improve on that. On that internal clock in his head, get out more because we've all seen he has the wheels to move, scramble, make just buy more time. He's got a solid arm, and like we mentioned, for a while now, he's got all the weapons. I mean, even though Evan Ingram's out, Kyle Rudolph's still a solid tight end. Yeah, Saquon Barkley, one of the better backs in the league, and one of the better receiving rooms in the league. With like we just mentioned, Kenny Golladay, Sterling Shepard's still there. People forget Darius Slayton's there. You get Kadarius Toney back. You're 4 deep. Like, man, that's a lot of quarterbacks will like that. So, and you have a very good defense behind you too. So you don't have to worry about playing catch up, or there's not a lot of pressure on the offense. Just take care of the ball is the main focus. So, honestly, yeah, I'm with you, John. I think this team will be looking for a quarterback in the offseason. I think they'll just miss out on the playoffs again. Regardless, this will be a tough team to play. I think, like I mentioned with Mitch's I almost said the wrong team name, Washington football team. They're going to be on the opposite end, though. I think there'll be a lot of 17-20 games. That they're just right there, but if they get the right quarterback, or if Daniel Jones does progress, they could be a real force. But I just want to reiterate one last thing. I mean, I remember reading the report. I forget where, but they were really banking on Justin Herbert to come out that year for Daniel Jones. He didn't, and I mean, not that it matters now because I mean everyone outside of Kyler Murray isn't looking too great in that quarterback class. But yeah, it's not looking like an amazing pick. Like it initially did. But like I said, can't fault him for that because the other 3 quarterbacks after Kyler Murray aren't looking too hot either. So we'll see what the Giants can do, if they can address that, or if maybe they can surprise us. So that is the New York Giants. I feel like we spent a good amount of time on them. Now we can move on to the team that John probably is dying to talk about. I don't know, but I'll be real quick. The Dallas Cowboys, they're on Hard Knocks. And so I'm gonna go over some of their. I'm gonna go with the losses first. Sean Lee, I believe he retired, correct?
Yep.
Lost to center Joe Looney. Alden Smith also left. I don't think he had much of an impact. Chidobe Awuzie, cornerback, also left as well. I'm trying to see if I'm missing anybody else important. John, is anyone off the top of your head? Say Xavier.
I mean, Andy Dalton left.
Oh, Andy Dalton. Why is he not? Sorry, he's right there. This is why I should make a spreadsheet. That's my fault.
You're good.
But yeah, this is once again, this is all via overthecap.com. So addition wise though, John mentioned, I think we mentioned before, Cowboys offensive line isn't as great right now as it used to be. Brought in tackle Ty Nsekhe from the Bills, who I thought was solid. Brought in a couple of safeties, and Malik Hooker and Keanu Neal, because they did bring in Dan Quinn to run the defense. Let's see, that was a long snapper. Just making sure.
Also added safety Demonte Casey,
He's on
former
the bottom
Falcon
of the list
as well.
Not really much else. I know y'all were strapped for cash anyway because you had to re-sign Dak. And then draft-wise, though, really hit it out of the park. And excuse that ad that just played if you heard that. Playing ProFootballTalk.com. First round, I picked 12. Got Micah Parsons out of Penn State. He's already looked really good in the preseason. Looking like he's going to be a great pick regardless. I got a guy in the second round, Kelvin Joseph, a cornerback out of Kentucky. Guy I didn't do much homework on, but maybe I think he's more of I'm assuming he's a kind of a scheme fit for Dallas for that Seattle scheme that they're going to be running, the cover 3. And they got a few other guys, a few other people, but I liked also fourth round Jabril Cox, a linebacker at LSU, a good solid, kind of take a chance on him. I'm not sure why I thought he was around third round for me. So especially if I'm forgetting his name, Jalen Smith is still not very good. He can be the rotational guy if necessary, I feel, but I'm not sure how Dallas feels about that. But I'll stop. I'm forgetting the word. Filibustering. John, how do you feel about your Cowboys off season and how it will affect this season?
Obviously, there was a lot of high expectations last year that a lot of people, myself included, put on the Cowboys, and they did not live up to them for a variety of reasons. But, I think the main thing that really stood out, because the offense, you can make the excuse that, okay, they had a lot of injuries. And I think it's a valid one because when a lot of your top guys are hurt, it's just hard to perform. But on defense, they were just bad. Like they were just flat out bad. I know DeMarcus Lawrence missed a few games, but like for the most part, they just sucked. And so that has brought about a big offseason of change. And one thing that I've heard so far about the Cowboys defense is a lot of people are sort of negative on them going into this year. It's like, well, they're just the same old defense. And whether they improve or not, that's just factually wrong because the defense is so different just personnel wise. I think like half of the defense has been overhauled. And once you start including backups and all that kind of stuff, their entire draft, I think, except for offensive tackle Josh Ball in the 5th round, and then wide receivers Semi Fehoko in the 6th or 7th round. I think those are the only 2 offensive players, 5th round as well. And so those are the only 2 offensive players. Everybody else, and I think there was like 7 picks besides those guys, were defense. And so they went and they addressed defense pretty heavily. And I think the biggest move that I was excited about was actually bringing in defensive coordinator Dan Quinn. We had our most successful defensive seasons over the last decade in the Seattle scheme with former Seattle DBs coach Chris Richard calling our defensive plays. And so I think Dan Quinn, he can bring back some of those schemes that made us successful because last season we tried to completely stray away from that with defensive coordinator Mike Nolan. And I'm just glad that they fired him because his track record even before Dallas was never good when it came to defenses. And so at least we're getting Dan Quinn, who has some incredibly successful defenses under his belt previously. Now I'm not going to assume that this defense can make that sort of jump, but I think the goal right now for this defense is just to be mediocre. And I think it's within the realm of possibilities, but it's still going to be tough to do just because they were so bad last year. The notable position battles that I've heard about in training camp are, first off, corner. Kelvin Joseph was an interesting pick. Not that he was a bad one. I think that there was guys that they wanted that were picked ahead of them. Trevon Moehrig is the name that really stands out to me, the safety out of TCU. Apparently they were really high on him, and he got picked by the Raiders. And I think there was another corner that also got picked like early. Tyson Campbell got picked early in the 2nd round. I hadn't really heard if the Cowboys were high on him, but I mean, I assume that he was somewhere on their draft board in that 2nd round slot because they needed a corner. And so once those 2 guys went off the board, I think they just went with the most talented guy that they saw. And Kelvin Joseph was a guy who formerly was at LSU. I think he got kicked off the team for disciplinary reasons, transferred to Kentucky, got things under control, had some successful seasons. And I don't know, basically I just think he was, one of those guys who I think has a lot of high talent. He reminds me of Randy Gregory when they picked him, a guy who they thought could have gone higher. if he, didn't have the issues he had in college. So I think they were going for the most talented spot. I don't feel like it was scheme though, because the thing that I noticed later in the draft is that Dan Quinn went for long, lanky defensive backs with Nashawn Wright and Israel Mukomaku, I think is how you pronounce his name. Those two guys are both like 6'3", 6'4" defensive backs, and they're very long wingspans, all that kind of stuff. And if you look at Dan Quinn's former defenses, Richard Sherman, 6'3", Brandon Browner, 6'4", like that's the stereotypical corner that he sort of wants. Kelvin Joseph's like 5'10", 5'11". So I don't know. I don't know what the mindset was behind picking him, but I don't think it was a bad pick. So far, I haven't heard that he's going to win the starting job in training camp, but he's a second round pick rookie. Not all of them can do that. So anyway, so that's what I've heard out of corner. And then the other big major spot on defense would be the linebacker spot. And I know that casual or just fans of the NFL who don't really care that much about the Cowboys are sort of really high on Jalen Smith, but I think that's just because he puts up a lot of tackles and he's really good at getting tackles. But if you're a Cowboys fan, you know that his tackles are like 12 yards downfield after a big play that shouldn't have happened if he played it correctly. And maybe you can blame it on the scheme, but I'm just really concerned that the injury he had in college is starting to limit his mobility later in his career, because I think one of his shining assets was his speed. And so, honestly, I thought the Cowboys were going to cut him this offseason, and they can't now because once I think it was after June, they didn't cut him. They fully guaranteed his contract for the season. So they're going to play it out with him on the team this year. But all I'm saying is if you watch the Cowboys and you're shocked that Jalen Smith is not playing a lot, that's why. But everything I've heard in training camp is so incredibly positive on Micah Parsons and Jabril Cox and Keanu Neal. Keanu Neal is played safety before, but he's playing linebacker for the Cowboys. I don't think he's played a single snap at safety in any of training camp or preseason so far. It's just been purely linebacker. I'm sure maybe if injuries happen, he would, potentially have to move back to safety, but right now it's just all linebacker. And the big reason that they wanted him to do that is because Leighton Vander Esch is okay at it, but Jalen Smith sucks at it, and that is coverage from the linebacker spot. Keanu Neal being a bigger safety, he played coverage a lot, and he's significantly, good at it compared to most linebackers in the league. So I've heard nothing but good things about him there, and I think he's going to have a really large role on third down specifically. Micah Parsons, I think he's like the highest graded run defender in preseason so far, and he hasn't played a ton, so it's a small sample size, but our run defense was terrible. Look back at the Browns game last year, and you can see that Micah Parsons is going to have a massive role for this team. I think that he's going to be on the field a lot, and I think they're going to move him around at different spots. I've heard that they might play him a little bit as a pass rusher sometimes, sort of like Bruce Irvin was for the Seattle Seahawks during their runs. But also I expect him to play a ton of linebacker because he's just really good at football. Leighton Vander Esch, I think, has had a quietly strong camp. The biggest issue for him has just always been injuries. And so he's healthy right now. And if he can be healthy, I think that's a solid addition, for the team to him, just being back. So yeah, overall, I think they should improve is basically what I'm saying, just because they have so many different faces on defense. I think another name that's sort of going under the radar right now because he's hurt is Neville Gallimore. I know you were pretty high on him last year in the draft. I was pretty high on him. I've heard really good things out of him in training camp. He's supposed to be a starter this year. He did get hurt, and I think he's going to miss a few games, but he should be back. At most, I think he's going to miss 4. But he should be back, and I think that him and Tristan Hill, when they both come back at defensive tackles, could be some big, much-needed additions for the defensive line that we need. So that's the defense. Offense, I'm just going to keep it real short. CeeDee Lamb's a baller. Draft him in your fantasy leagues. He's going to go off, but don't ignore Amari Cooper. He's going to go off too. This offense, I mean, they have the talent to be a top 5 offense in the league. They have no excuse to not be one. And I expect everybody to rebound from last year, because I think last year overall was just a bad offensive year. And I think everyone should improve this year with Dak being healthy, the offensive line being healthy. But the one issue, like I mentioned earlier, was turnovers. They have to clean that up. I'm hoping the coaching staff is emphasizing that and not ignoring that because of just how bad the overall team was last year. Because although they were the number one offense, I think through like 4 games last year before Dak got hurt, they also led the league in turnovers. So that's my thing on the Cowboys. My expectations are if their defense can be mediocre and their offense lives up to expectations, I think they should win this division. If that's the case, obviously the questions remain, can those things happen? Can they be healthy on offense? Can the defense improve? We'll see. Yeah. So, it's just kind of a wait and see thing with the Cowboys because they have the potential to win the division and be a playoff team. But if things don't pan out, they could also be bad.
Yeah. So, I'm with you with the most, especially the offense. I expect turnovers. Also, the fact that Dak will be back. I think the turnovers will trim down. So that'll help trim it down just naturally. Yeah, hopefully, I'm glad that I didn't know Neville was basically a starter, so I'm glad that that he did. And honestly, this scheme fits Neville Gallimore better than what y'all were trying to run last year, which I am with you. I mean, there's just I don't know who to blame on that. I don't know if that's Mike McCarthy, but just trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. Like that defense was literally drafted to run a 4-3 Seattle scheme, and you try to make it something it's not. That's why it didn't work there.
For the record, I blame Mike McCarthy for hiring his buddy Mike Nolan, and then I blame Mike Nolan for instituting that defense, and I blame Jerry Jones for allowing Mike McCarthy to hire his friend who has a track record of crappy defenses. Because if you look at the defenses he's had, his last defensive coordinator gig, he had like 3 straight seasons on the Falcons with a bottom 5 defense. I don't understand how they hired him.
Yeah. Sorry, what was I? Oh, and then So I do like the linebacker. I didn't know Keanu was playing linebacker, and the only worry about that is he has had injury issues. And when it comes to the run game, like if he's at linebacker, he's gonna be more in the box, I assume.
Which, like I said, I think it's mainly a third down role. Okay. I don't know how they'll mix him in, but because they do have Micah Parsons, Van Der Esch, Jalen Smith. I think the goal is to pull off Jalen Smith on third downs, put in Keanu Neal, and if he does get hurt, I think Jabril Cox and his coverage ability can fill that void. But I hear what you're saying because he's had bad injuries.
Yeah, and maybe I forgot his name. What was it? Kelvin Johnson, right? I almost said Kevin.
Yeah, Kelvin Joseph.
Joseph. Sorry, I'm mixing up him in the Giants cornerback.
Yeah,
but maybe you went and got that guy instead of the typical tall lanky receiver for the Seattle scheme because. The Seattle scheme, I feel like just as a whole, it's starting to die out because teams are starting to figure it out as a whole. Now, granted, Gus Bradley, some of the better teams that run the Seattle scheme, I'm trying to think of the other one, but Gus Bradley, I know, they still mix it up. They don't just sit in, the same 2 or 3 defenses. So hopefully Dan Quinn can see that from his counterparts that he worked with and say, okay, I need to incorporate that in my offense because, yeah, especially if Kelvin's not starting. If it's, I did like Trevon Diggs last year, but still.
Just from what I've heard for the cornerback depth, by the way, it's Trevon Diggs, Anthony Brown on the outside, and then Jordan Lewis in the slot spot.
Okay.
Kelvin Joseph and Nashawn Wright as the backups to the outside, and then Maurice Kennedy is their slot backup.
So cornerbacks aren't as bad as I thought. I was gonna say I was like more of their cornerbacks, but I forgot you got Anthony Brown and Jordan Lewis, who are both solid, more twitchier guys. So it could potentially be that, but yeah, like I think we kind of alluded to, health is a huge concern because also Malik Hooker's back at safety and he's had injury issues. But if he's healthy, he can be a solid play the Earl Thomas role solidly. Obviously not to the level Earl Thomas did, but he can be that type of. He can just execute it well. I am worried. The only thing I'm worried about too, I forgot to mention for your offense, this will be my last point, is offensive line. Zach Martin's still good, but Tyron Smith's been. I don't know how he is health wise, but last year I feel like not even last year, but for the last 2 years he's kind of been dealing with stuff.
I mean, at this point, you just chalk it up that he's going to miss at least 3 games because I think it's happened the last handful of years, not even just the last 2.
Especially with the 17-game season, and then. So hopefully we'll see. Maybe maybe the line just got better overall. I think that was your center. I'm guessing Biotish is how it's pronounced. It's kind of hard. Yeah, so he's a starting center.
Okay,
so hopefully he's progressed. But yeah, I'm a little bit with you. I regardless, even if that all clicks, I don't think that they'll win the division as long as Washington's relevant. Just because it's I just against Washington, I feel like their defense will be able to slow you down enough where their offense can do a little bit. But regardless, I think it's very close between you and the Giants. But I know you're better than the Eagles. I'm not sure what your schedule looks like, but I expect Cowboys to be a wild card-ish team. I'm not sure if I'll have them making the playoffs, but just saying in realistic terms, would not shock me if in the season if they're in that hunt. And honestly, before we get to the Eagles, so I expect this division just to be better as a whole. I think last year too, they just have a similar style of play. A lot of these, like we just mentioned with Washington and the Giants, two very defensive teams. They're going to win ugly games, not rely on their offensive lot. And then, the Eagles, the Eagles still have a solid offensive line. We'll get to them in a second. But because sometimes you have to play to your division. And I think that's just what happens in the NFC East. And everyone just thinks that, they're all sucky or it's boring football. But they're just a little more old school, or, except for the Cowboys maybe in recent years. But even before that, we're going to build through the trenches and then figure it out from there. So, but that is the Dallas Cowboys. And we'll see if they can stay healthy. And if hopefully, I think I did see just a few minutes ago that Dak is expected to be full go for week 1. So,
yeah, in training camp, he's been fully cleared to start throwing, do everything. So
alrighty. So now going to the last team, last but not least, the Philadelphia Eagles. A lot of turnover with their new coach and, the Jalen Hurts era, which they finally named him starter earlier this week, which was a shock. But here we go. In terms of losses, traded away Carson Wentz. Alshon Jeffrey left and actually hasn't been signed. I'm a little bit surprised by that. I forgot about him. That's why I'm surprised. Malik Jackson also left. Wide receiver Deshaun Jackson as well. Marquise Goodwin, who is a depth wide receiver. Jason Peters as well. One of their longtime linemen went to the Bears. Jalen Mills, who is the defensive back. Just see. And then a few, running back Corey Clement. And I'm trying to see. I think that's about it in terms of losses. In terms of additions, brought in, like our friend Mitch mentioned during the Washington segment, brought in Ryan Kerrigan, safety Anthony Harris from the Vikings, cornerback Steven Nelson, grabbed linebacker Eric Wilson from the Vikings, and then also recently traded for Gardner Minshew at quarterback. And then draft-wise...
Go for upfront low prices on a great select...
Sorry about that. Stupid ad. Round 1, pick 10, Devonta Smith. And then at round 2, also went Alabama again with one of my favorite centers, Landon Dickerson. So re-adding to offensive line. And then third round went with the guy Milton Williams, a defensive tackle out of Louisiana Tech. And then they had a few other picks, but not guys that I had on my radar or John did. But regardless, John, how do you feel about the Eagles and I guess the upcoming Jalen Hurts era?
I think a lot of people, especially like fantasy football people, are a lot higher on the Eagles than I am. I always preface this with any Eagles thing. Maybe I'm biased because I am a Cowboys fan, and if there's one team I hate, it is the Philadelphia Eagles. But I like Jalen Hurts. I don't think that he is an NFL level thrower. I know that he had some pretty decent games last year. But I wonder how he's going to prepare or how he's going to do this year when NFL teams are fully scheming for him as opposed to just it's the Eagles, we're going to win. Like you don't really need to pay that much attention, now in a year where it's okay, it's Jalen Hurts, let's stop him. Can the Eagles hold up? I just have a lot of questions about their entire offense. Maybe except for like tight end. Tight end, Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz. Apparently Zach Ertz wants to stay now, so that's sort of figured out. They have a really good tight end room. But offensive line, Brandon Brooks, Lane Johnson, they have had some significant injuries recently, and we know how good they both are, but they're getting up there in age. They, like I said, they're coming off injuries. So one has to wonder, how they'll do, just sort of like the Cowboys offensive linemen. And then on the left side, Jason Peters is gone. I can't remember the names of their left guards and their left tackle. Their left tackles, I think
so. Guard Brandon Brooks, who was out last season, he tore his Achilles like week 1 or right before the season. Then it's Jason Kelsey. They always have like someone now filling in at like right guard. For a while, it was like Isaac Samuel.
Well, Brandon Brooks is their right guard.
Sorry, left guard.
Yeah.
I think they had Jason Peters play left guard last season. And Andre Dillard played tackle. I didn't watch a lot of Eagles games, so I don't remember. So,
Regardless, okay, so Jordan Mailata is their left tackle.
because that guy commented saying that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Anyway, I'm not sold on him. I mean, maybe we'll see what happens there, and maybe I'll just be wrong. And then let's see for guard, which maybe Landon Dickerson swings to guard for his rookie year while Kelsey still plays center. I don't know what the plan is there, but it's Isaac Selmalo. I don't know. I'm not sure if I said that right.
I don't know. He's been there for a couple of years filling in, but not an amazing guard, just solid.
I would do the thing where you play Landon Dickerson at guard, see what happens, because I think he's a really talented player. But at least currently, it looks like the projected offensive line is him as a backup. So yeah, I have questions about those two guys on the left side. And I think if one side of your line is really weak, then there's only so much your line can really do, because then you become predictable. You're probably going to run a lot to the right side. But even then with those guys, like I said, there's injury concerns. And so just question marks around the offensive line as a whole, except for Kelsey pretty much. But even he's getting older. So, there could be decline in play. We don't know. At wide receiver, I still have question marks. Jalen Reagor didn't have the most amazing year last year. I think he did have injuries though. So, we'll see what kind of year he can have this year. Devonta Smith, I think he's had some good preseason games, but sort of like Saquon with like the Giants offensive line, I think he could be limited just based on the skill set of Jalen Hurts. Could be limited if the offensive line play isn't amazing. And I know that people are, like, oh, he doesn't need to gain weight and all that kind of stuff. And I'm on board with that too. But I do think there is sort of a added level of physicality in the NFL that he might have to adjust to. I'm not saying it's going to take a long time, but I do think there will be an adjustment period. And we're seeing that with everybody, right? Every rookie, like sometimes it takes a little bit to get used to it. I mean, even Justin Jefferson, who had an amazing year last year, like he didn't play the first, couple of games. And maybe that was because the coaching staff just felt like he needed to sort of, get into the swing of things of how physical the NFL could be. So yeah, I have question marks on like the entire offense pretty much, except for maybe Miles Sanders. But I think with Nick Sirianni, their new head coach, pretty sure that every offensive scheme that he's ever been a part of, there's never been a running back that's had over 50% of the touches. And so I expect Miles Sanders to have to share the ball with guys like Boston Scott. And I think that could just limit, his value. And so, like I said, I just have question marks about the entire offense, question marks about the coaching staff. On defense, I think the biggest concern is the secondary. Obviously, Darius Slay is there, and I love Darius Slay, but last year he just showed signs of age, especially when he had to guard guys like DK Metcalf, who's an athletic freak. It wasn't a pretty sight.
Was that when Jim Schwartz told DK? He said something to DK, and then DK went off that game?
Yes. Jim Schwartz said something. I don't know what he said.
I forgot what he said. He says, like, you're not... it wasn't even that bad, though. But he says, like, you're not Megatron.
I think he said, like, you're not Calvin Johnson yet, or something like that. Or like you're not Calvin. Yeah, you're not Megatron. Something along those lines.
Before the game, tell it to him after the game, man. Don't give the man more juice to. Do you see the man? Do you see how jacked he is? Like, you want to give him more firepower against your terrible defense? Sorry, I just had to jump in with that. That was a funny thing from last year.
And then he torched their secondary. So also, I imagine they have a new defensive coordinator. I don't know who, but I mean they have a whole new coaching staff. And, in their secondary, right, they have Darius Slay. They got Anthony Harris, who I think is another one of those guys that sort of got overpaid by the market because of, actually, no, he had a really cheap contract, actually, if I'm remembering correctly. But even then, the Vikings are one of those teams that sort of like pump out the free safety spot with just different guys every time, because Harrison Smith is really solid on the other side. And Mike Zimmer is pretty good at like scheming up his safeties. So you just wonder how good they can be outside of a Mike Zimmer scheme. But on the other cornerback
Gannon is their defensive coordinator.
Okay, and I don't even know who that is. So just unproven coaching staff. But the other cornerback spots, it's Steven Nelson, who got cut by the Steelers. He was actually graded really well last year, and he's on one of the best defenses, but also just had, a monster front seven, so he probably didn't have to cover as long as he will with the Eagles. who, mind you, still have a good defensive line, but similar issues the offensive line of injury history, of just getting up there in age with Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox, and how effective can they continue to be into their sort of fading years. See, I just have a lot of question marks about this team just across the board for the most part, and I expect them to be last in their division. Their win total right now, according to Vegas odds, is at like 6. I'm probably going to take the under on that. I mean, first off, we have to play the AFC West, and that's the Chiefs, that's the Chargers, that's the Raiders, that's the Broncos. I think all 4 teams are capable of beating the Eagles. I think all 4 teams right now are better than the Eagles. And then, you got to play defenses like Washington and the Giants. And I'm not sure that Jalen Hurts and that offense can compete with those. And then if healthy, you got to deal with the Cowboys offense. And I'm not sure their defense is good enough to stop that offense. And so it's just, I think it's going to be a rough season for the Eagles. But hey, you won a Super Bowl a few years ago. So, still recent enough to where you can talk about it.
So, yeah, I'll start with the defense because I'll just start with this. I think we all, anyone that isn't outside, that is outside of Philadelphia, as we've learned in some of our comments, expecting this team to not be very well. Good, and that's fine. I mean, they're kind of in a reload, and Nick Sirianni didn't look that great in his first press conference. But I mean, hey, they're there to coach, not to talk to the reporters. So maybe there's hope with that. But yeah, in regards to the defense, I mean, didn't really address linebacker, which is a huge hole they had last year. Like John, and then also like John mentioned, lost a lot in the secondary and didn't add to it really. So I mean, as good as our front 4 is, I mean, I love Fletcher Cox, but he's getting up. He's kind of showed signs of slowing down, and don't have much depth now. I mean, they have like Derek Barnett, Brandon Graham's getting up there in age too, and I think they have Javon Hargrave, but he is solid. But other than that, like not many guys after that. I don't think they have Josh Sweat anymore. But so yeah, issues on defense there, and first time it looks like it's his first time being an actual defensive coordinator is Jonathan Gannon. He was a defensive backs and corners backs coach in Indianapolis prior. So I mean, maybe he'll show some stuff, but I'm just not very confident with at least with the talent he has. And then and then in regards to the offense, like John mentioned, I'm with John. Jalen Hurts is a great athlete, and I think if he could become a pro level thrower, but he's not there yet. And on top of the fact that not very reliable targets outside of really Dallas Goedert, who I think showed last year that he is the main tight end now. Zach Ertz I think is starting to get there because also Dallas Goedert is a better blocker. We already talked about Jalen Reagor, how he's kind of been disappointing as we all kind of expected when he got drafted. No clue. I mean, Devonta Smith, I expect to be back, but he missed, 2-3 weeks of training camp and preseason, so he might be behind. And regardless, I'm not sure this is going to be a creative enough scheme to create opportunities for him. And then it does suck because I did draft Miles Sanders in my fantasy league, and I think that he can be a really good back. But if they do running back by committee, that it might limit it because Boston Scott is good, but I think he's more of a third down, change of pace back than, but we'll see. We'll see how they use both of those guys. But I'm with you, John. I don't expect them to do much this season. So you got to hope that Jalen Hurts progresses and that their young talent just progresses because, Philly's in an odd spot where because they went all in for so long for the Super Bowl, they're kind of still shuffling some veterans out, bringing some new guys in. So I don't expect them to hit that win total either, but I'm not a betting man. So I'll keep it that short and simple for the Eagles because go ahead.
I was just going to say, I want to know what you think about the Gardner Minshew trade because I find it incredibly interesting because I don't think they're a team like, for example, the Cowboys were linked to trading for Gardner Minshew. And for them, it'd make a little more sense because it's clear Dak's your guy. If he gets hurt because he got hurt last year, you have a capable backup who's proven that he can be, a starting quarterback in the NFL, in Jacksonville. And he had terrible stuff around him. So you'd have to wonder, what can he do with actual weapons? But the Eagles are not in that situation. No one's expecting them to win right now. They don't have an old veteran quarterback who has ever struggled with any sort of injuries. So I'm just, what that signals, just taking all the context, is that they don't necessarily have as much faith in Jalen Hurts as I think some people believe they do. And part of me, I would not be shocked if Gardner Minshew becomes a starting quarterback at some point in the season, because I don't understand why you make that trade otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. It makes no sense to me, unless they don't have full confidence. Because I mean, it's, in theory, you want Jalen, like we talk about some of the other young players, you want Jalen Hurts to go out there and make mistakes. You should be okay with that, with the fact that he's not going to dominate right away. But so,
and if he gets hurt, like you have Joe Flacco who can just play, and then you lose a lot of games, but at least you get a high draft pick. So like I just don't get it,
And then I'm surprised could have gone. And I think I know why, because, you don't want to bring in Cam Newton because he's Cam Newton, so it may automatically create more pressure behind Jalen Hurts, or because, as soon as he messes up or, things aren't going well, fans are going to want Cam Newton, even players on the team, because, hey, we have a guy who wins the Super Bowl, let's play him. So I understand that. But, yeah, I just feel like there's better, less, obviously, I don't want to say threatening, but that's what the word I'm going to go with is threatening options. And yeah, I don't know really what the Eagles are doing. Like, it seems like every time, okay, I see the direction they're going, they do something weird like this. But maybe all NFL teams do. So I don't know. Maybe they just want a quality backup because, maybe in theory too, every NFL team we're gunning for the Super Bowl. So maybe they really feel like they can win the Super Bowl up there. But at least it wasn't that high of a draft pick. But wouldn't shock me if towards the end of the season they do that. Maybe also to preserve Jalen Hurts, see what they have, to see if they can get anything out of Gardner Minshew. Maybe. But I'm with you. It doesn't make much sense otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it was so weird. I feel like that has to maybe even put doubt in Jalen Hurts' mind. I don't see the positive in why they made that move, because even if I don't think Gardner Minshew is gonna come out and become this. All of a sudden he's gonna have a massive crazy year where he becomes a franchise quarterback. I think he's solid, and we kind of know what he is, and maybe in the right system he could become a top 20 quarterback or something like that. But I don't know. It was a weird move. I don't understand it in the slightest.
Alrighty. Well, I think we're gonna wrap. That's what we'll call a wrap there. So that is the NFC East, brought to you by us. Let me make sure there's no random comments. No, we're good. So that was the NFC East. We'll be back. Probably record Labor Day or Tuesday. Probably we'll see. But we'll do our season predictions. We're gonna predict playoff teams, how the playoffs will turn out, and season awards winners, MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, Offensive Rookie of the Year, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll be back for that early next week. And then right before, hopefully we'll probably do it hopefully Wednesday or Thursday, or maybe sooner. We'll record it sooner. But regardless, we'll do our get back to our weekly spread picks so I can defend my title against John. So we'll do that next week. Otherwise, hope everyone, if you enjoyed, like, comment, subscribe wherever you're watching or listening, please. Like we mentioned before, John's McKill on Instagram. It's just at Shut Up and Ball Pod. And then our Twitter and our TikTok are just at Shut Up and Ball. And then our Facebook page is just Shut Up and Ball. So, and obviously if you're watching on YouTube, just, like, comment, subscribe. It's all free. So thank you everyone for the support. And, we're all getting excited for football. Got a lot of fantasy drafts this weekend. So if you're like me and John, or John and I, good luck in those fantasy drafts. And, hopefully you get the guys you want. And hopefully it works out. But it probably won't because it's fantasy and it's weird. So, all right, everyone, have a nice night.